Hello, good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Seward, and this afternoon I'm going to show you how I make knitting needles. If you want to know more about the book that I wrote, this is the book, and you can look at elizabethsewardauthor.com. If you want to know more about conferences, workshops, and teacher training, go to waldorfhandwork.org. Now, this is the book I wrote about knitting, how to teach knitting. And there's a little story in there about how children find twigs in the forest and make knitting needles out of those. The book looks like this, and you can find a link to buy an ebook or a paperback or a hardback at this website here, elizabethsewardauthor.com. Now let's get started. It's fairly quick and easy. Many people like to have the children gather twigs or saw dowels themselves. I actually pre-order high quality hardwood dowels from Twin Birch. You'll find the contact information in the back of my book. You can also do what I used to do, which is go to any lumber store, and I would find 1/4-inch dowels, which make a size 10 or 10.5 needle. So these 1/4-inch dowels come in long 48-inch lengths. If you bind them together tightly, like a whole bundle of them, say 12 or so, bundle them tightly with masking tape or painter's tape, then you can use a saw. If they're bound on both sides, you can use a table saw to cut them quite nicely. They do splinter a bit. The one thing to be very careful about, though, is that they are good quality hardwood. Softwood just doesn't work quite as well. I also use just about 9 inches long. I find longer than that is a bit awkward for the children to use. Now, I've always thought, and I've spoken with some experienced craftspeople who agree, that the best way to make something is the best way to make something. So even though in the story children go outside and rub it on a rock, I actually use a pencil sharpener. So I'm going to use this pencil sharpener to sharpen one end of the needle. And here it comes. It's almost there. You can feel it. Quite important actually to teach the children how to use a pencil sharpener, use their fingers and their wrists, right? Nowadays you see a lot of fist grips and children tend to just grab it with a fist and try and ram it in, and that just doesn't work quite as well for an even, nice pencil shape. So once I have it almost pointed, you don't want it too pointed or you'll hear in the story that Jeremy would worry about hurting himself, then I use 2 kinds of sandpaper. I use a rough sandpaper first, and then a very fine sandpaper. And they look like this when I buy them. I buy them in bulk, and then I tear them into smaller sheets. So here is the very fine sandpaper. This is actually an 800, wet or dry, and it's used oftentimes for metal sanding, but it's a super fine finish. And this is the rougher sandpaper I often use first. It's not always purple. Sometimes it's not exactly that grit, but it's it's much rougher than the black. It's fairly rough, but not so rough that you're going to score it with the sandpaper. Now, once I have that, I have the children smooth it as if it were a rock, actually, because that comes from the story. So smooth and turn, smooth and turn. So you get a really nice smooth edge like this, over and over again. And you see how I'm turning it like this as I sand it. So if you rub like this, or again with a fist grip, which a lot of children use like this, all it does is it makes the thing shorter and stubbier, and that's not what you want. You want a very gentle point to the needle. So over and over again and turning it. I also would smooth it all the way along. And the story and I say that it should be as smooth as the skin on the inside of an egg. Or just recently I heard somebody say it should feel like a rose petal. And that is a lovely image, as soft as a rose petal when it's done. Right now, it doesn't feel like that, but it will. So I'm sanding here, and I've done this a few times, so it takes children quite a bit longer, but you don't want to spend a whole lot of time with the children making needles. Basically, they're learning to knit, and they're making their own tools in order to learn to knit. So I wouldn't spend much more than a class or a class and a half doing it. Now, if it gets lopsided at the point, I say to use it like a paintbrush, just kind of swivel it around like this. And the value of hardwood is that it kind of seals up the pores nicely. Now this is going to do pretty well as a needle. You can see the shape there, I think. I am going to have them sand it all the way along. So I hold it like a taco, kind of, or like a little blanket. Sand it all the way along like this. And I'm sorry for the noise. And again, in the classroom, you have to figure out how to deal with like the sawdust and the pencil shavings, because they do kind of go everywhere. This might be a good thing to do outside. But I'm just using this cloth here. So once it is fairly smooth, and again, I've done it a few times, it would take the children longer. It's not super smooth. That's when I use the black paper and I hold it. And again, I rub it until the friction makes my hand hot. Not until it hurts, but it will make my hand hot. So I'm going to hold it, and this is going to make a little bit of noise. I'm moving it fairly quickly. I'll slow it down for the camera, but fairly quickly. And the quicker I do it and the more I turn it, you see how I'm turning it with this hand here, the more friction and the smoother it gets. It seems to sort of seal up the wood. And not only do I want it smooth at the top of the needle here, oh, it's quite warm, but it has to be smooth down here as well. So I turn it around, and here we go again. Remember, of course, they should only make a point at one end. Not always obvious. A little faster to get it done. There we go. It feels pretty good. Almost like a rose petal. And I actually have the children close their eyes and feel it. And they can feel then which is smoother. You can actually see it. You begin to see that it's a little shinier there. That means it's pretty much done. Right here, it's not so shiny. So in the interest, though, of moving along, we'll say it all looks nice and shiny and smooth as a rose petal here. This is the most important part of the needle, this part here, because this is the working end of the needle, and you want to make that super carefully done. So again, I'm going to pinch it in this paper here, and I'm going to kind of hold it, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, kind of like at an angle. So not flat to the paper like that, but like this. And that allows me to pinch this point here. And it's kind of like a bird's tail, is what I say. Here's the bird, here's the tail sticking up. And I'm going to twist it like this, pinching it really tightly here. You can probably see that my fingers have changed color. Nice and tight, like this. Of course, I would do 2 needles, but for the camera here, I'm just going to do 1. And then I check it to see if it's pointed. So pointed, it would prickle, and I don't want it to prickle Jeremy. So again, like a paintbrush, I'm just smoothing it around in all different colors very loosely with my fingers. Like this, kind of rounded, feels really nice. And again, I'm actually closing my eyes as I feel it to see how it feels. And I don't feel any ridges. You want to avoid ridges right here. Sometimes it can go kind of flat, sometimes it can go a little bit to the side. And so check it, and the idea of checking a child's work, sort of quality control, is a good thing, actually. It's not anything goes. So this is quite nicely done. I've got quite a bit of sawdust here. I would normally smooth it much more here, but now I'll just give you an example of how to put the ends on. I use just glue, just white glue, school glue, and this is probably dried up, but there we go. I put a little bead of glue, just a little tiny drop of glue all around the edge here like this, and you can't see it at the moment. Just twist it and put a little bit of glue around there. And then I have a finial or a bead, and the outside diameter of the dowel should be the inside diameter of the bead. And I push it on, and there with the glue, it will sit there. I don't want anything too heavy there because it will alter the way that they can use the needle. But I do want that end to be kind of attractive. So sometimes people paint it with watercolors, or I've seen it done also with nail polish, which is quite pretty. And then in the classroom, I hold the needles like this, and I write the child's name in ultra fine Sharpie this way around, like that, printed. And then I write it on both of their needles so I can tell whose work it is. I don't have to label the work because their needles are labeled. Well, there we have it. There's half of a very nice pair of knitting needles around size 10 or 10.5. I do hope you will look for my book. It has all kinds of fruits of experience, basically, teaching through stories. Jane and Jeremy Learn to Knit, available as an ebook paperback or hardback. And here is my contact information if you'd like to reach out or if you'd like more information. Thank you for watching today, and I look forward to making another video for you.